Professor Wes Porter, Criminal Law, introducing now some specific topics. This is the biggest crime we'll cover, of course, homicide. Much of the course, explores parts of homicide. So this is the introduction generally. We'll get into in other videos more specifics. So talked a little bit about the criminal process in this course, spent time on the parts of crimes, the act required, actus reus, the criminal mind, state of mind required, mens rea, causation at issue with result crimes, the prescribed social harm that we're attacking with a criminal statute or with common law crimes. And then we're going to spend time, of course, on defenses, primarily justification and excuse defenses. But we are going to talk about specific crimes, and there are specific crimes that you have to know. And homicide's a big one for all parts of your studies. If you wanted to look at different types of classifications for the crimes, they're less important, but it's helpful sometimes to organize them. Crimes against the person, of course, murder is a part of that, but there are other assault, other crimes that are crimes against people, things that we're doing to harm someone else. Crimes against property, that's really your larcenies, your burglaries, knowingly receiving stolen goods, even robbery. Obviously, it's against a person, but it's a property crime. Inchoate crimes we'll talk about more specifically a little later on in the course, but that's your attempt, conspiracy, solicitation, accomplice liability. And then less so in this course, but of course, prosecutors, criminal law advocates, defense attorneys, they spend a lot of their time dealing with crimes against society, which, we're talking about guns and drugs and things like that. Less at issue for our course, but an important classification of crimes nonetheless. Okay, so murder or homicide, we're again talking about a result crime, any act. So most oftentimes we're not talking about in a specific way. We're talking about any act that brings about the death of another human being. You've heard a lot, and you've heard some of these words, and we're going to give meaning to some of the words. Certain homicides, classified as murder, classified as manslaughter, which, believe it or not, is a lesser form of a homicide. You've heard degrees of murder, which they didn't have degrees of murder at common law. Degrees of murder are essentially a creation of a statutory creation to separate out and to segregate out different forms, different types of murder and how they should be punished. We learn essentially through the introduction of some additional topics where statutory systems, where statutory schemes can get their additional elements to call something a degree or to call something a first degree. So I have one slide, the slide that comes next, that hopefully organizes some of that and breaks some of that down for you. So when we talk about murder, and especially at common law, it's a funny phrase, but it is stuck in it, and it's stuck in most penal codes, and it's called malice aforethought. And malice aforethought is really, it's not a great term because it doesn't mean what it looks to mean. Instead, it's a combination of essentially four intents, and it's any one of the four intents could equal malice aforethought. So usually a killing with malice aforethought is common law murder, and malice aforethought means either an intent to kill, an intent to cause grievous bodily harm, which GBH, grievous bodily harm, essentially means you were taking acts that was either going to deform someone, maim someone, really hurt them. It's just you're lucky they didn't die. There's another odd phrase called depraved heart. That's a recklessness to such a degree. Think of when you're playing Russian roulette, or again when you take actions that are so reckless and so not caring about the welfare of others. They say that you have a depraved heart. And then we'll talk more specifically about a felony murder rule, but at common law, there's certain underlying felonies that if you're in the commission of that type of felony, like a kidnapping, like a burglary, and someone dies as a result, we call that malice aforethought too, even though you might have only had the intent for the underlying felony and not an intent to kill or an intent to hurt someone. So first degree often has stuff on top of that. The most popular ones that we'll study and talk about in some of the cases, deliberate, willful, premeditated, which, you see a word like premeditated, and then you look back at what the common law handed us with aforethought, they seem like they're similar. So malice aforethought, we're just, taking on those four different intent requirements, and it encompasses all of the four. Premeditated is a little something more that we've thought about the crime, that we've that we've planned it in some way, that we've sat and laid in wait in some way to commit the crime. Deliberate really means that we've taken time to think about the options, that it wasn't a spur of the moment thing, and willfulness, is one of those, like purposeful, like intentional, like common law. It's just another way that we've intended to bring about this result. There's also felony murder in certain statutory schemes with certain crimes, or they consider felony murder to be first degree, where just the others, intent to kill, intent to commit grievous bodily harm or depraved heart, might be, murder 2, which was common law murder in the yellow box. Then the rest of it seem like discounts. You might have essentially a discount for if there was some kind of provocation, if there was some kind of a heat of passion. The classic example of that is you walk in on someone close to you, your wife or lifelong partner, and they're having an affair, and you kill the lover, and there's an obvious heat of passion there. You were driven to it. It was some type of lesser form. That discount of provocation, or what's called heat of passion, can get you from common law murder, which is essentially murder 2 in most schemes, but common law murder, malice aforethought murder, down to voluntary manslaughter, which, when it comes to punishment, which is when this matters, when it comes to sentencing, might be a lesser form of punishment. We're going to talk about a number of defenses here, but sometimes there are forms of this defense, and sometimes there are imperfect defenses. That is, it doesn't meet all the elements, but there's some type of discounting involved. Negligent homicide, just because it requires some form of lesser mens rea, lesser than an intent to kill, lesser than intent to commit grievous bodily harm. I was negligent, and that's what caused the death of this person. That's certainly a statutory measure. But you can see by this, murder at the common law was really just in the yellow box, described by this 4-pack in this phrase, malice aforethought. Then with our statutes, when we borrow from the common law, any one of the yellow box might be basic murder, murder 2, and then additional elements, additional requirements might be first degree murder, like deliberate, willful, and premeditated. And then there might be certain discounts down to voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, lesser forms like negligent homicide. So you can see this kind of sets out what a statutory scheme may do. And here's an example. I was a federal prosecutor and work in federal court, so I often look to the federal statutes, but there's examples all over in every jurisdiction. But you can see some of the elements here right under Title 18 United States Code 1111. Murder is the unlawful killing of a human being with malice aforethought. There's your result crime. There's your borrowed phrase from the common law, malice aforethought. We know right there that this means, federal murder incorporates an intent to kill, an intent to commit grievous bodily harm, depraved heart, so on and so forth. If you look at the second paragraph, every murder perpetrated by poison, lying in wait, willful, deliberate, malicious, premeditated, they're describing other instances of something that may make it first degree and enhance the punishment. And it's actually pretty unique. If you look at the paragraph beginning with "or," that's their felony murder paragraph, and their felony murder paragraph has things like arson and escape and kidnapping. If we're doing these things and during the perpetration or attempted perpetration of those crimes, death results, that's also going to be a first degree. So it sort of defines out the underlying crimes. Everything else, if it doesn't have those special elements of poison, lying in wait, willful, deliberate, or if it isn't this variety of felony murder, then it's second degree murder. It's just malice aforethought murder. So this is, I threw a lot at you right there, but this is a typical murder statute that borrows some of those common law phrases, incorporates some of the concepts like malice aforethought, describes in that jurisdiction, this one federal, what's going to have the added bonuses, and of course to get it to first degree murder, and then there'll be a separate part of the statute that will describe manslaughter and when those discounts to lesser forms of homicide.